restaking was the first application layer of Eigenlayer, and I think a year back when, or like a year and a half back when like Eigen just announced the entire mechanism of restaking with native ETH and stuff, then like restaking protocols where Puffer like grabbed a huge share of it, came into the picture, grabbed a lot of TVL, made the entire restaking market very liquid, a new era of DeFi stuff unlock. Like, you were kind of the faces of that, like Puffer, EtherFi, and like many other protocols who kind of worked in that space was like the torch bearers of the like kind of stuffs which was possible with Eigenlayer. Now it's been like a year and a half, I feel, or like 2 years or maybe more for you guys for the entire development. And just starting the entire discussion very randomly, how was the journey for you, like till like all these 2 years, how you came across Eigenlayer? And now for us, it's very easy to think in hindsight that okay, fine, restaking and all were pretty chill. It's like okay, fine, it's just you doing derivative token. But for you guys, a couple of years back, it wasn't easy. It was a new sector which was unfolding in front of your eyes, and you guys came and did it. Wanted to know your thoughts, how you came up with this, how you came across Eigenlayer, and what's the entire journey look like for Puffer Finance?
Absolutely. So we have entered the Ethereum ecosystem like wanting to solve one of its like pressing matters. At the time that we were working on solutions back in 2022 and 2023, one of the major problems was the over-centralization of the validator set. There were concerns that it is very challenging to run staking at home or run staking as sort of a hobbyist or less professional operators. So we wanted to make it easier with lower barrier to entry to run these staking operations. Of course, there were Lidos that were focused on more of the like larger scale operators. There were rocket pools, but it was still hard because it always required 16 ETH. And for a lot of users, there was like the barrier of like not being able to redeem the ETH immediately from rocket pool. There was like initially also liquidity issues as well for both Lido and rocket pool. So we wanted to solve for this. That's where we introduced the first like hardware-based anti-slashers that helped solo validators and operators to run their staking operations. Later on, we met Shiram. Probably it was halfway through 2023 or like maybe earlier, beginning of Q2 or ending of Q1. And he gave us the pitch of like, hey, now the stake can be utilized to actually secure other infrastructure. It can be also an extra avenue of income for these like operators or for anybody who stakes. That's where we went to the realm of restaking. Of course, they were initially starting with the native restaking side where the entire validator ETH would be delegated. But then later on, they went to ERC20 as well, which expanded like this item of like shared security or the concept of slashable security. Slashable security can be used for any commitment. So that also expands on the income for the validators. So we entered that realm and we became the first and right now the only permissionless restaking platform. You can, if you just want, you can go spin up a 2 ETH bond Ethereum validator and you can take advantage of restaking and it can become part of the network. Of course, from there on, we expanded to many more infrastructure applications and other things that I'm pretty sure we get to unwrap. But I do still foresee, similarly to investors, that this has a great future, even though it hasn't been realized yet, to be able to use like same state to secure other like commitments and applications. It's going to have a big future. And that's why there was a very big entry of a sudden, like if you know, like we still hold the single DeFi protocol that hit over 1 billion of TDL in 16 days. That's probably arguably the fastest so far. Like no other protocol across the DeFi ecosystem of crypto has hit that. And that's like the fact that, like, of course, we were trusted, and we didn't really do any off-chain deal or anything. And it's also for the Ethereum holders and other investors realizing the true value of like such ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. talking a little bit more about restaking, I think as you mentioned, when like Sriram kind of came with Eigenlayer, and like when people got to understand about, okay, fine, you can use the same stake capital to secure more mechanisms, and at the same time the validators and the stakers slash restakers, they can earn more on their assets, starting with ETH, now ERC20 or any protocol token which are ERC20 based for a project. But currently, like what I have observed in the past 6-8 months, and it's pretty well known in like CT also, that there is a stall in restaking, right? Like it the way it kind of grew, I think for you guys 16 days a billion, I think for many protocol it took a little bit more time, but many protocols have touched that like 1 billion like the mark, which is a very big thing, even if we consider from a TradFi perspective. But now the growth has kind of stalled. I like there are problems, like let's say you might not need that much amount of restaking security, that it's already almost 10-15 billion, it fluctuates in that level in Eigenlayer total restaked security which is available in terms of capital. Maybe like the AVSs are not yield generating yet, so that the conviction might have gone down. Just want to know your thought on that, like why the growth has stalled. It's not kind of a hyperbolic, like or the hockey stick curve is kind of again kind of plateaued, it's not growing anymore. What are the problems which we are facing? And like as you mentioned, it's a new primitive. I am personally also very much bullish about restaking, because the kind of stuff, like the flexibility it produces to secure many protocols. But what are the problems, as I mentioned, and how can we solve towards the problem which is in front of us at this moment?
Of course, like simply put it, it's much easier to put money in a protocol than build around the protocol. This stake is supposed to secure infrastructure. To build this infrastructure and to build the users that need this infrastructure takes time. Like you take, for example, Ethereum proof of stake. We had already so many users that there was so much demand. There was so much demand for the security of it, and people just came in. But now what stage that you're at, like Eigenlayer, is like not that much long time has passed. But we know that there are many applications that need this. What made institutions, whales, users comfortable with moving on-chain? Decentralization and the economic security, right? Like if you look, even Bitcoin, which is proof of work, like what made the users go in is like that amount of very high stake that some of the miners have. If you want to get that mental model that, okay, there is a lot of stake by these miners, not like intentionally in BTC locked or anything else, but there is a lot of financial primitives and stake to these miners that they should not mess up really doing their mining work. That made the whales, the institutions, comfortable purchasing BTC. You look at Ethereum, there's billions of dollars worth of economic security, billions of dollars to lose if someone wants to enter and like be malicious on the Ethereum network as a validator or like block producer. That's why people felt comfortable using it. Moving forward though, also like when you like, for example, AI primitives or even like more basic infrastructure like what we work on, preconfirmations, come into play, the sort of like institutions, family offices, whales are going to feel comfortable to go, for example, use Puffer UniFi's rollup because they know it's secured by $6 billion worth of economic security. Right? Like they know that transactions are going to go through because there is a big stake to be slashed or to be lost by the people that are proposing their transactions or giving them the commitment of preconfirmation. It is not going to happen overnight. And I feel like a lot of people in crypto, unfortunately, because everything is cycle oriented, they want to get as much of that value extracted as possible within that cycle. But since this is such a big sort of infrastructure and like PMF heavy effort, it's going to take a while to realize it's like returns, to realize it's like APR or realize like that amount that people are waiting for. That's why I would say like, yeah, it's been slower. Again, just because staking is much easier than building an entire infrastructure that staking secures.
I think one another thing, as I again mentioned, that is the real world stuff on AVSs. I think all these LRT protocols, they have a huge huge like responsibility on their shoulder, because now they have good amount of restake capital in them. For you, I think it's almost 5 bill. The I don't know the total TVL which I found in the website, around that, or let's say it's above a billion at this moment at least. So it's a huge amount of capital. So many restakers have locked in their money, and for most, it's fine. Like, you are Ethereum centric, I'm also Ethereum aligned. We know that okay, decentralization and stuff are important, but they need the real yield. And if the AVSs are not kind of generating the real yield, it's kind of, they might lose their thing. Okay, fine, why I'm going to put my money up there, I might put it somewhere else when I'm getting some real yield.
Yeah.
So personally, for AVSs also, to get that revenue model sorted out and to transpile that to all these operators and stakers are very important. You being a LRT protocol in the middle, who kind of delegates this all this native like ETH or other ERC20 tokens which are on your platform to various AVSs, what do you think, like, what are the lowest hanging fruit for all these AVSs to kind of like yield generate for the stakers and operators?
Of course. First of all, I'll make it clear like what the TVL on our website is. Of course, it's a cumulative of like our sort of our yield products, like, which includes restaking and also our vaults, plus our AVS that's been secured. It's sort of cumulative this. Now you're mentioning that the yield hasn't been there yet. I always counter argue, like, we in the restaking realm, we always have that base yield from Ethereum proof of stake. That's the advantage. Like, it's like right now, a user, if they want to put their money in liquid LSDs or restaking, now restaking is a slightly higher yield because there's like the token incentives from Eigenlayer itself and from other protocols as well, right? So, and right now it has like almost no risk of slashing as well. So users like can just like enjoy restaking right now, and it has all the integrations because it's almost similar to LSDs. So there's no disadvantage of being here, right? In real terms. And right now, I'm pretty sure almost all the LRTs have a lot of integrations, as many integrations as an LST like Lido has. So if you want to just keep a yield bearing asset in your wallet, you just go buy an LRT, because right now almost it's like zero risk as well, right? So a lot of people say, oh, it's not useful to hold LRT, but you're getting already the yield that an LST would have provided you, plus now a little bit more, because I believe there is almost like 0.6, 0.7% discrepancy, and which means you get 0.7% more, which means it has more utility in lending, especially. So users can take advantage of it in lending or like doing other activities, or providing it as a leverage in stablecoin platforms or other places. But now, to the real question is like, okay, why don't we just call it LSTs now? Because there is no yield, there's no slashing really implemented on any of AVSs. I know Eigenlayer did it themselves, but AVSs haven't adopted it just yet. The idea is like that's coming soon, in my opinion. One of the most like low hanging fruit of like applications that is going to scale and provide decent amount of yield, in my opinion, is preconfirmations. Now, that's what we bet on. That's what we built for. Why do I say that? Why do I say preconfirmations are pretty big? Because they give you like fast transactions. One of the bottlenecks of such a huge network like Ethereum with over 1 million validators today is its slowness. It takes like 12 seconds to sync this computer. And if you want to put that to perspective of like a frequency that a computer syncs, it's very slow. So these preconfirmations give users like a faster guarantee of including their transactions. Now for us that currently focusing on L2 preconfirmations, that's also a massive lift. Why? Because right now, the way that rollups are running, they're running by a centralized sequencer, and they're running quite isolated from the L1. Like, if you put your money there, it takes 7 days to hours to days to take your money back, or you have to trust a third-party bridge. At the same time, they're fast, but they're not that fast. Like we can still get much faster. That's where our execution pre-confirmations, for example, on DevNet, testnets, we hit like, for example, sometimes like 2 millisecond transactions, right? That's already like 40x, like, or 20x faster than the other alt L1s like Solana or others, or even 10x faster than existing L2s. So at the same time, we are working on other primitives like prover networks or other things that helps achieve atomic composability. I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but it means that your rollup is in real-time sync with the L1. Now you can spin up a rollup instead of just a smart contract on the Ethereum L1, and all of a sudden your application is going to be hyper fast, and also like the user doesn't have to click on the drop down or choose between bridges or kind of like go through the headache of where is my assets, where I can get it back on Ethereum. It gives comfort. Withdrawal gives comfort to user because I can get my asset back on the Ethereum L1 at real time. So these are the primitives that I believe like are very low hanging fruit that the tech has been developed for the past 18 months. We're planning to launch them by the end of Q2, beginning of Q3 on mainnet. Like already projects, protocols that we have been working with and incubated are going to deploy these app chains. What is going to provide the security for like the sequencing side for them, for pre-confirmation side for them? It's EigenLayer. And the amount is quite logical right now, which is a couple billions, because like you see some of the top L2s, how much assets they're securing. But like, of course, this is a different model because it's atomically composable with the L1. So TBO might not be like the measure anymore because it's not the value locked on the rollup anymore. Things are going to soon be measured by volume on app chains, because TBO and total value locked is like, okay, my ecosystem has this much locked, so you don't have to wait for 7 days or how long to do your transactions. But at that point, this like TBO is going to go away, and it's going to be probably total value maybe secured, total volume secured maybe at some point. And that's what we're building for, and I'm quite bullish on that. I know EigenLayer is working on AI primitives as well. Personal opinion, maybe that's a little bit too early to because the value of unbiased and verifiable AI hasn't been realized yet. Yeah, I know we had an effort a couple years ago to build for verifiable AI. It's just a bit early. People haven't realized the value just yet.
I think talking from like about the pre-confirmation stuff, I think that's a very core component of the UniFi AVS, if I get it correctly. I think since you have the, like as I was discussing about, you are the kind of one of the OGs in the restaking and EigenLayer ecosystem who kind of build LRTs, and the next immediate upgrade if you want to expand in the EigenLayer ecosystem is build an AVS. I think which kind of UniFi is trying to do, as I think pre-confirmations is the main stuff of the UniFi AVS, although I see like, okay, it has that vision of kind of being a based rollup down the line. Just want to know a little bit more about you, about the UniFi AVS, like what are the core components? You mentioned pretty detailed about the pre-confirmations, but how pre-confirmations are coming, and there's a based rollup angle to it also, how these are stitching together. And I know you have touched it, but I want to know a little bit in little bit more in depth how it's using EigenLayer, in what, like in like how the operators are being used, and are these your validators, are these the validators of the Eigen protocol, and like again, like the how is there any roadmap to kind of generate revenue through it, so that again it kind of gets transpiled to the restakers?
Of course. So that's a great question. So I think like we're going to rebrand UniFi AVS to probably just Puffer Preconfs very soon. That is going to be like its standalone protocol. Of course, it's going to support our based app chain stacks that is coming in the future. So that's one application of it. But at the same time, the way that we're thinking about this pre-confirmation protocol is it should really support any architecture, not only OP stack, not only Arbitrum stack, not only Tyco stack. It should support like all of the rollup stacks. Why? Because it's now like highly economically secure replacement for sequencers that can make your chain super fast. And this can really scale. This is the vision we just started with. It has advantages because it uses execution preconfs on the L2 side of things. Maybe I'll just unpack what is inclusion, what is execution. Inclusion is just a promise that your transaction will be included within a block, right? Within a slot. You get a slot range, you say, I promise to include your transaction on slot X to Y. Execution, and the problem with inclusion is, let's say you requested to purchase some 1 ETH from Uniswap today, maybe at like $1,800 right now. And the pre-confirmation tells you, okay, I'll purchase it. Inclusion preconfs just says, I will purchase it, but I wouldn't guarantee you the price. Because it's just inclusion. I'm giving you a range of slots that I'm going to include your transaction. The advantage of execution preconfs is the UX is better because it lands at that exact price that you requested to purchase this. Since the word comes from it, it's a pre-confirmed transaction. It's not yet being done on chain and included into the block and kind of like included in a state transition. That's why this promise of execution pre-confirmation is much higher, much stronger on the L2 side. Of course, execution preconfs are way more challenging to implement on the L1. That's why we're moving into L2s and implementing on the L2 side of things. Now, of course, it's going to serve all of our app chains that launch using the UniFi stack. It's going to provide them with super fast transactions, and but also it has the capability of supporting other chains as well. So let's say somebody has an OP stack already running, let's say Base, for example, running OP stack. We can just plug in UniFi AVS's pre-confirmations and give them 10 millisecond transaction. That's as simple as that. And that's sort of like our motto is like, okay, let's try to modify the chain itself with the least amount of smart contract changes as possible. So we can just tap in this execution engine that can run fast. That's like UniFi stack right now. Initially we did like sort of a Tyco modification. Now we're doing like an LP, for example. And this can like directly just serve this. And like right now with the collaboration we have with the Gattaca team, we've been able to like bring it like 10 millisecond transactions on OP stack. I'll unwrap about the base rollup side later, but now the money that these like sequencing, these gateways, these things called gateways that are providing pre-confirmations or fast transactions will be then of course distributed amongst the restakers. And it will realize its gain. Of course, like I mentioned, like by the end of Q2, Q3, we were launching our own incubated app chains that are like taking advantage of this technology. But in future, like we can serve any existing chain as well. They can take advantage of it and bring the APR. And you can see like now the sequencing fees are flowing to the users that restaged. So each pre-confirmation is going to have its own underlying value. That's like one aspect to think about it. Now you mentioned base rollups and base sequencing. The concept of base sequencing is the proposer on the L1 gets to propose the sequence transaction of the L2 and include it in this transaction pipeline. We see that as more of a roadmap because like always, similarly to building vanilla blocks on the L1, which is a very complex task for the validator itself, he came up with a PBS architecture and how MevBoost can actually like increase the income by using relays. You just give it to builders and they build complex blocks very fast. So you don't miss your proposal window. You actually have profitable blocks proposed. Similar to that, we think for base rollups, we can delegate the proposing rights to these gateways that are on Puffer AVS so they can actually run these rollups with the fast like promise. We can decentralize sequencers by having multiple gatelets. They're economically secure. They're now no longer just running by one team with one reputation promise. It's just now backed by money. It's backed by few gateways. So even if one gateway messes up, like executing a pre-confirmation, there are multiple gateways down the line that can pick that back up. And that's the roadmap of Puffer Preconfs, or today it's called the UniFi AVS. And I believe these are like, again, low-hanging fruit. They're going to bring income to the user very fast.
Awesome. I think like it's very important to have for all the infra builders to kind of generate a revenue for their own project, because all the CT narratives and all the discussions in the crypto community, it's like be it app, be it infra, that they need something on the fundamentals, maybe to for us to grow as an ecosystem, or maybe to get the next round of funding. And even there is like we're not in a very good position as a market for whatever reasons. I think many projects like Buffer and all are already big, but let's say the new projects, but what I have seen, and when I'm talking with folks, be it Eigenlayer and others, it's very important that they have a proper revenue model in place. I think for infra which you are building, it's very important again to have a revenue model, because you have the responsibility of kind of the restakers, because they need to have the money. And I think like great thoughts on that, like how the sequencer monies will kind of flow in, because we know sequencers generate a lot of money by seeing all this base, maybe optimism and arbitrum and other stuff. Before, like, I have some few Ethereum centric questions too, because you're a long term Ethereum builders and we are not in a very good situation out there. But just want to know your one thought about the precons thing. Like, all these initiatives are kind of having faster transactions, or at a some level to kind of boost the TPS, so that we can do much more with what Ethereum is offering at this moment. Want to know your thought that the approach with other L2s, be it Monad or be it Mega ETH, they are taking separate approaches. Monad with the parallelization technique, they have their own, I think, DFT consensus they're using. They have their own DB and stuff. You'll obviously know it much better. Megait is taking a centralized sequencer route, where they're producing everything in that one large block sequencer and verifying it in Ethereum. So like these are many approaches, and Preconf, if I compare in that category, it's a different approach again to have faster transaction confirmations. Just want to know your thought, like how are you seeing like Preconf with the other two, like Monad and Megait, especially because they are yet to be on mainnet. They have enough mindshare, and like Preconf, as like you were telling, it's like it's a different approach to the same scalability bottleneck problem. How you are going to see the approaches, and what are the pros and cons of all this?
Of course. So I'm going to have a very spicy take here. First of all, Monad and Mega ETH, they're not L2s. They're just chains. So let's put it aside, because they're not posting data back to the Ethereum L1. They might be EVM compatible, because the way that they do their opcodes, it means they're Ethereum compatible. But they're just their own thing. Like Mega ETH does not even settle on Ethereum. Monad does not settle on Ethereum. They use alternative TAs. They use their own, like, Monad doesn't even use TA. They're just their own data pipeline. Yeah. So, and Mega ETH uses like EigenDA, of course. So that's one thing. And of course, like, I feel like CT Mindshare and Bubble, one side, the asset holder completely on the other side. Why did people like enter Ethereum the first place, or enter the crypto, BTC, everything else? It was that financial freedom. It was that decentralization, that they knew their money cannot be moved or manipulated or done anything wrong with. Running a massive computer from back of the garage or like anywhere else goes against that. Like, I'm just gonna straight like point that out. Like, of course it's gonna be hyper fast, but there are a lot of things out there that are hyper fast. Netflix is very fast. YouTube is very fast. Our other own banking system like Visa cards are also very fast, right? We can just no matter which part of the world you are, you just make a transaction and do it. So there are fundamentals like that a lot of people in crypto care about, and big asset holders that we deal with every day, they care about, like, okay, if the founder of project X gets a letter from X department, are my assets safe, right? Like, these are like the questions, that the fundamental questions that should be asked, right? So these, like, fastness on one side, fastness is just a one characterization of like in blockchain. Now I will admit, like I mentioned in the beginning, Ethereum today is too slow. Like, why? Because like for financial paradigms to come out, HFT, all these like things that a lot of people use, needs to be scaled. It needs to be fast. One of the reasons that Ethereum probably lost a little bit, I call it the gambling cycle of meme coins and meme coin craze, that was just basically meme coin bull, was that, yeah, it was expensive to have a big scale meme generation coin, whatever, on it. So the dev, when they sat down and they looked at, okay, take pump the right? One of the most tractions on the meme space. They compared the chains. They're like, okay, I have Ethereum. If I want to build my application on this, my users have to suffer from two things. One is high gas fees when the traffic goes up, and two, they're gonna suffer with these transaction types. Like they have to approve and spend, but of course, someone as degen as meme coiner, they want to be as fast as possible. They don't have patience. They just want to buy, quick buy, and the offering right there in front of them was Solana. Of course, Solana and like the team, the others like support developers a lot as well, because they're kind of considered the underdog, right? They want to like take traction, so they go support teams individually so they can deploy on their chain, and that's how things happen. Now, so my philosophy is Ethereum has the network effects. If you were to build a mega ETH and Monad, it's gonna take years. Other reason is Ethereum has already dealt with real world problems. What are real world problems? Real world problems is MEV. Real world problem is like, oh, if the traffic goes up. Real world problem is like, if a third of my validators like stop finalizing at some point. Real world problem is being able to support 1 million validators. I know it's redundant. We don't need 1 million validators, but that's something that, okay, it's been stress tested. This is funny to say, and I hate to say this, even hackers want to hold their assets on Ethereum, right? Because they know it's decentralized. Nobody can really like go take their assets or mess with them. So you see like the values of decentralization and security. Our philosophy is like, okay, let's help scale this stake. Like we already have. It already has network effects. They have consensus. Instead of reinventing the wheel. I know Ethereum can be improved. EVM kind of sucks. Altcoins kind of suck. It can go much better, but it had the network effect. So let's improve it. First step is to, of course, like there has been efforts from the foundation, from the researchers for years, to scale the L1 itself. So it becomes fast. Let's include like account abstraction EIPs, like 7702, so we can get around that approved spend ASAP without having to hard fork, like, or do crazy stuff to get rid of the transaction types. The effort is already there. Now for us, as outside protocol developers to scale this ecosystem, we have ways as well. One of the ways including the preconfirmations. Let's, like, our philosophy at Puffer is rollups should become real rollups, not their own, like, secluded chains that they get their own TVL and they get to basically just clone whatever is on Ethereum and build on their own chain. Rollups should be that app chain. It should be just rolling up the transactions, posting them back to Ethereum. User can just continue their journey on Ethereum, or they shouldn't feel the difference that they have left to another chain or came back. That's a UX issue. Now, take Pump.Fund for example. If Pump.Fund knew they can, for example, do a UniFi app chain as developers, it's atomically composable. Instantly, Pump.Fund protocol has access to all the value of ETH and all the other tokens that sits on Ethereum itself, all the wrapped Bitcoin, all the BTC-Fi stuff. At the same time, it's super fast, 10 millisecond transactions, faster even than Solana. So they have access now to this entire community, this entire trusted community that is already sitting on Ethereum to do their development, post transactions to Ethereum, bring value to Ethereum because they're using the blobs, the data of Ethereum. They're paying their dues on top of the Ethereum, but at the same time, as an app developer, they also take benefit from their own transactions. If you go on a Monad, if you go on a Mega ETH, if you go on Solana, when a user does transaction, as a developer, you get no value. But as an app chain owner, you're gonna get a little bit of value from those transactions as well. See, things are becoming much more symbiotic here because so you get a portion of that sequencer fee. Of course, the AVS has a deal, like portion of it goes to the app chain developer and you are paying back Ethereum. Ethereum gets revenue back again. It gets traffic again. Traffic is number one important thing for a chain to get traction and like have things. And we're now able to, without reinventing the wheel and fancy and complicated things that needs tens of tons of audits, we were able to scale Ethereum ASAP without having to wait for the future hard
Mm-hmm.
forks. And like any network, in my opinion, any network as it scales is going to need rollups. We have seen it on Solana. We have seen it that initially they were like, oh no, one chain for all, blah blah blah. But as you get users, you need these network extensions.
Mm-hmm.
The process for transactions.
And they have mentioned in that way, network extensions, Solana.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, app chains are also network extensions.
Yeah, right.
Like it's like funny to just whatever we want to call them, async, insync, whatever L2, like L2, whatever. It's not the L1 itself. You need to have a primitive, a process that helps you scale on the side of your main chain itself to support transactions, to support scaling. So Ethereum getting faster itself as its own L1 is also going to heavily benefit these app chains. If Ethereum reduces block times from 12 to 4 seconds, increases the block capacity, then of course the app chains are going to get even faster and can post more data as well. It gives a very good universal scaling. So to just wrap things up, I know I rumbled a lot about like I went on a lot about things, but to wrap things, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We have a great network as is. We can expand on this great network. And this network has already dealt with a lot of real world problems. That's why we're keeping an Ethereum building on it. If we want to go deploy another L1, all it's going to do is just gonna then you go to that new L1. It's going to face new problems in 2-3 years down the line as it scales. And we're like, back at the same point, let's just do the whole Ethereum debate. Like, let's do this, let's do that. Since we're already on this, let's do it right. Let's not set the entire industry back by reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, I think this is where I think all this based rollup and all this like scaling the L1 and all the researches are coming on. I think that is where you all like Perfa being a long-term Ethereum builder is like I think that's where all your goals are aligning, be it Precon, be it based roll, because these are all directly Ethereum aligned, not to create a separate Perfa ecosystem, raise money, create a building ecosystem. And as you mentioned specifically about all the problems, I think everything now makes sense about what Perfa is trying to achieve. And before we wrap up, just one question, you can keep it very brief. That's, we know like Ethereum is not in a very good situation. Like I'm not only talking about the token price being reflected there, but there is general changes in the org structure. There is general change in the roadmaps. I think they are also prioritizing some product stuff rather than research and all. Want to know like from you, what are the top 3 problems? You can be very short. Like what are the top 3 problems in your observation in the Ethereum protocol currently is facing? It can be tech or non-tech, whatever you want to say. And what you want out of Ethereum to fix immediately, so that all these challenges which Ethereum is going through and all these debates and all can be solved in a good time frame.
Yeah. So I would say like one great thing that happened already is just admitting that there is an issue. Also, right? Like I feel like for probably a very long time, a lot of people are like, no, it's all good, it's fine, it's just FUD. There is an issue. Like there is an issue in coordination. There is an issue in like how to decide about upgrades, and there is an issue to being user centric, right? Like we previously, like I mean, a lot of people say, oh, we need to be like being product centric is of course meaning being user centric. Like you're building something that users have to use. Let's go think about that first, right? And I think like it took quite some while for them to realize, but of course like the core devs and others are like very smart and they're realizing that very soon. We need to care about who is going to use this chain. Like of course we have some dreams, some values, some like, oh, this should be like this, but maybe like in our small circle of like core devs, we have the wrong notion of how things should work. So being in touch with folks that are building for users, like that bring in user problems upstream, they're saying that, hey, maybe these EIPs are not even needed. I'm not going to even talk about EOF, but there's like EOF, like there were things, right? Like that people are like, oh, we just don't need this right now, right? Like, users don't need this right now because we were like working on these things. So I feel like there has been an improvement on that. There has been movements made to, of course, like changing the organization and pushing up the things. But I'm going to give you like just a frank feedback is Ethereum is now very complex. it has many things that have many individuals, many new like primitives that have been developed on it that people have stakes on it. So it's going to be a little more friction to coordinate it and do things. You look at BTC, everything around BTC just pump BTC. All right, like there is no financial paradigm. There is no like new things that have been developed under. It's just like pump BTC backs. That's why it has been easy. But Ethereum is different. Like we have smart contracts. You can build entire financial paradigms that has never been seen on this thing. Creates stakes. Somebody who built something big, they don't want to see a big change because they don't want to lose stakes. Somebody who's building new things is going to have different ideas. And that's the beauty of it, right? Like we have built such a massive ecosystem that everybody has an opinion to change it. Now, the last thing I want to touch is like we need to bring the user back. We need to give the users what they want. We need to keep them back. How users come back, in my opinion, is like building an ecosystem / infrastructure that is very supportive to developers. These are developers with their ideas that bring users on chain. Of course, I don't want to promote memes or anything or primitives that people lose money, but that's what users use. Have an infrastructure as a permissionless infrastructure, no barrier of entry. Anybody can deploy things on it and bring users to Ethereum itself. I know like majority, probably 90% of the things that people are not happy about Ethereum is just the price. What pushes the price? Use. People use it. People transact with it. People use ETH as money. The price is going to come back. Create an infra that devs can come back in comfortably. Devs can feel comfortable that they will attract users to it. We can acquire users. Help the teams that are building, maybe like, of course, useful applications, promote them actively, help them out. The users are going to start like funneling back to Ethereum network. We're going to see like adoption. Right now, already we're ahead of the curve. I want to just give like one positive feedback is like, you see all the institutions, almost $1 trillion assets or tokenized assets, they're choosing Ethereum. Because that's almost a no-brainer. Of course, like that's on the institution side, but we need to get all the other users aside from institutional financial aspects coming in. Of course, in American institutions are the major asset holders, but not in the rest of the world. It's the same way. So I think there is a lot of hope. There's a lot of like brightness in the future, but the road is always bumpy. Circling back, reinventing this entire wheel, saying, oh no, this L1 is going to be better. It's the same story is going to repeat itself. Ethereum is just 5 years ahead, right? Like once you get many stakes in an L1, once it scales so big, these problems are going to repeat themselves. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's not repeat 5 year to say, oh, now there's another L1 that doesn't have these problems. No, it's a very like complex social like coordination issue. It's a complex developer coordination issue you're already facing, and every smart person in the room is thinking about how to solve these coordination issues. Once they are resolved, we are going to be back to business.
Awesome. I think like great chatting with you, Amir. Like how you like explain how Puffer is doing using EigenLayer, the problems and the solution specific to Eigen and also Ethereum, and how kind of Puffer and UniFi is kind of coming in between. I think kudos to all the success you've got till now with such like almost 5 billion in TVL across so many operators, validators, and now I think the main part, the user-centric part with the quick confirmations using the pre-confirms which you're planning to rebrand, and also the based rollup stack. All the best for that, and I hope like to see more great exciting updates from Puffer.
Of course. Thank you very much.